This is 24 in 42. Welcome to 24 in 42, the show where we get to learn about the life, universe, and everything of an author. And this time we get to meet E.C. Ambrose, who I actually know as Elaine. And I got to meet her, ironically enough, in this book, which I will show a better picture, because that book, once Armand, who was on the show last season, sold me the rights and I made it this book. And then I read a book by this author and found out she was in that book. So it was quite a small world. Elaine, introduce yourself, please.
Hi there. So, what I usually say is my name is Elaine Isaac. I write principally as E.C. Ambrose. I'm the author of the Dark Apostle series, dark historical fantasy about medieval surgery. And as E. Chris Ambrose, I write the Bone Guard series of archaeological thrillers, which are sort of like Indiana Jones meets Special Forces. Currently, book 7 has come out just recently. I'm writing a couple other series besides. My brand, I would say, is knowledge-inspired adventure fiction. So basically, I read far too much nonfiction, do way too much research, and then I write adventure stories about it.
I love it. Book 7. Holy cow, that's cool to hear. But back up even further. You said, what'd you say? Surgery? Say that again.
Dark historical fantasy about medieval surgery.
Medieval surgery. Wow. Interesting.
That was a lot of fun to research.
Okay.
It all started because I needed to know a little bit more about medieval surgery for a book I was working on that was a secondary world fantasy novel. And I thought, well, it would add authenticity here if it wasn't just a magical healing, ta-da, all done,
Right.
he's better, but actually used some of the techniques that they would have been familiar with in a similar time and place.
Okay.
So I started reading a book about that, and then I read a couple of books about that, and then I had a shelf of books about that for the one scene that I was working on. And then I had the vision that began the new book, which is I could see a character standing in a sunlit doorway with blood dripping off of his hands saying, "My God, I've killed them all." And I needed to know who he killed and why and what was going to happen next.
Absolutely.
So I knew that he was a surgeon, not just a surgeon, but a barber surgeon, the lowest class of surgeons during the Middle Ages. And everything after that, I had to find out.
So what's the name of that book?
So that became Elisha Barber. And the Dark Apostle series is now complete in 5 volumes for your binge reading pleasure.
Awesome. I was not aware of that. I'm going to look that one up. All right. Well, for anyone new to the show, what I do is I send 16 of the 24 questions to the author in advance so that there's a little preparation and not a whole lot of time going, good question. And then I surprise them with 8 sort of tongue-in-cheek ones that get some fun answers and a little bit deeper on a few things. We time it simply to see if we can stay in the 42 minutes. And so I am going to start our timer here and begin. My first question is, what color do you write in?
I write in all the senses. Man, you can't just limit me to color. That's not fair. Not fair.
They sound a little dark, though, from what you've just been saying.
Mostly black or very, very dark gray. With blood spatters across the front, of course.
Little crimson in there.
Yeah, a little crimson.
All right. Did you grow up a city or country kid? And wherever it was, did you play only by yourself or did you have a group of friends?
I'm going to say suburbs, but the caveat is that we had 9 acres of land when I was growing up, which ended in a swamp at the bottom. And when we first moved into that house, we were at the top of a hill. There were over 100 acres of land behind us that was undeveloped.
Wow.
So we had a huge area to roam in, and roam we did. Usually my sister and I, sometimes with a couple of friends, then sometimes with a little close-knit friend group, say 4 or 5 of us. I got to be Aragorn leading the Fellowship of the Ring against the Dark Lord. Every once in a while I was Frodo, but mostly Aragorn. Sometimes we had survived a plane crash and we were now wrecked on an island and had to figure out how to survive. So
I love
many
it.
adventures.
And you being Aragorn actually totally matches my reading experience of what you write. So that's perfect. Oh, wow. 100 plus acres to roam. That would have been awesome.
Some giant boulders to climb on. Yeah, the kind of things that we're probably glad our parents didn't know we got up to.
Yeah, but all sorts of terrain, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That's sweet. What was your favorite cartoon? And when and where did you watch it, or do you still?
Thundercats. You remember that one?
Uh-huh.
I didn't
I'm
really
taking
watch a lot.
notes.
Oh, good. I didn't watch a lot of cartoons at home, but I would often sleep over at my best friend Elizabeth's house when
Okay.
I was a kid. She lived just down the street, so I could go through the woods over to her house. And we would often watch stuff together. So Thundercats was definitely a favorite. And then the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon
Yep.
we watched together, which is interesting because her mom was definitely in the D&D is demonic camp.
Mm-hmm.
So wouldn't let us play most of the time, but would let us watch the cartoon. So
Interesting. Okay.
sneaky, subversive.
Yep.
Yeah.
My family was in that camp. I could read anything I wanted to, but I could not play that game. I've only ever played one game of D&D as an
Oh,
adult.
that's tragic, man.
Yeah. So when you are writing, what assails your ears?
I have a soundtrack for each book or for each protagonist.
Oh, cool.
So each soundtrack is a little bit different. Every once in a while, I have trouble getting into a book because I haven't figured out the soundtrack yet. Sometimes my fans are actually able to help me with that.
Okay.
So when I was working on a Greco-Roman historical novel, and I sort of put it out on my Facebook and was like, I am struggling with this because I haven't found something that feels like the right thing.
Sure.
And one of my friends actually pointed to the Assassin's Creed had done a game that came out that I think was called Odyssey. So it was set in that period. And a lot
Okay.
of people on YouTube have done compilations of game music.
Yep.
So someone had a 4.5 hour compilation of the music from the game, which
Wow.
worked really well. Other than that, almost all of the soundtracks tend to involve at least one sea shanty.
Okay. Whether it's the story or the character, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, the variety of shanty varies.
Okay.
But I was delighted to recently discover a shanty singing group that does shanties of contemporary songs. So,
Wow.
working on a female protagonist in a contemporary tropical thriller right now that I'm sure we'll talk more about later. But uh, so originally she didn't have a sea shanty in, and then I found that this group had done a sea shanty version of all the single ladies.
Okay. I I have recently became aware of pirate metal, and there's a lot of sea shanties in
Oh,
that.
I gotta look that up.
Oh, be careful. There's some really fun stuff, but there's some
Uh-oh.
very vulgar stuff too.
That's sometimes the difficulty.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, but yes, that was quite an eye opener or an ear opener, I guess. All right.
Speaking of your ears being assailed.
Yes, exactly. I couldn't listen to that. Not while I would laugh too much and be caught up in it. Hey, if you stumbled across the yellow brick road, would you follow it?
Absolutely.
Where would you like it to lead?
I think the Emerald City would be a fascinating place to visit, but also I want to go to the village of the Dainty China people, which doesn't even make it into most of the Oz lore. It's in
Right.
the original book,
Yep.
and I think that's completely bizarre. Imagine living beings that are made out of China.
Uh-huh.
I would probably have to stay on the outskirts of town because I'm by nature rather clumsy. So I think the Dainty China people would perhaps prefer that I not visit.
Right.
Maybe I'll just watch them with binoculars. I think that could be safe.
I like that you said you'd like to get into the Emerald City because several of my guests have previously said they wouldn't want to get into the Emerald City, but they also wouldn't want to go to Munchkin Land, so they're sort of stuck in the middle.
They don't know about the Dainty China people. That's the
Apparently
trouble.
not. Yeah, I forgot all about them until you brought it up. I never read past book one. Did you continue reading any of that?
I've read a few, and years ago, in a former life, I made original design stuffed animals.
Okay.
And I was hired to make a winged monkey by a guy who actually wrote a book called The Winged Monkeys of Oz.
Huh.
He is perhaps the world's biggest Oz fan and has a room in his house devoted to Oz, in which he has at least one copy of all of the Oz books, including several books that he has now written and published, plus lots of memorabilia, and now, yes, a full-sized winged monkey that I made for him.
You made it to his museum. Does he happen to be in America?
Yes, because he actually literally bought my house.
Oh, sweet.
They were friends of ours years and years ago, and I ran into them outside town hall. We lived in the same town, and I said, "Oh, chit chat the way you do." And I said, "Well, we've started preparing that we might have to repaint the interiors of our house because we're probably going to put it on the market." And my friend said, "You're going to sell your big beautiful house?" And then turned to her husband and said, "Do you think we could buy it?" And he said, "Well, I don't know, maybe."
Nothing like putting them on the spot. Yeah.
They came to see it, and I showed. Usually they say you need to clear out all the personalization, right? You want your house to be like sort of a blank slate that people can move their stuff into.
Yep.
And instead, I led my friends on a tour of my house, and I said, and you can picture your Celtic harp here, and your loom will be over here, and your celestial devices will be over here. Your art studio will be up here. And it was like it had been meant to be their house.
Awesome. That's pretty cool. Okay.
And then they installed a yellow brick road.
Is that their front sidewalk?
So that, yes. We hadn't, our driveway was unpaved and they needed a parking area. So they installed a sort of a parking patio and then front sidewalk that were yellow brick.
Awesome. That's we meet all sorts of people, don't we? All right. One of the most important questions of this entire interview. I would like to know 3 of your favorite books as a preteen or, before 16.
Where the Wild Things Are by Maurice Sendak.
All right.
Absolutely. The 13 Clocks by James Thurber.
Oh, I remember that.
Read over and over. Everyone has always wanted to be a princess. Everyone has always wanted to just to save someone. And we had a couple of books that were classics, but they were in sort of formatted for children, and they were chonky little things about that thick and about this tall.
Okay.
And the one that stood out the most to me, I know one of them was The Hound of the Baskervilles, that we read repeatedly, but Robinson Crusoe was the one that really stuck out for me, which may be why we kept having that game where we crashed on a desert island and had to survive.
Right.
Because we certainly read that one until the pages fell out.
Read that one and Swiss Family Robinson, and that's what my brother and I played all the time. But yeah, forests are great for that. And your swamp would have been awesome. Did you have any exposure to the Never-Ending Story when you had the swamp?
Oh, yes.
Ooh. Could have been dangerous.
My sister is the horse person.
Oh.
Yeah.
So what ages were these, do you think? A little bit early? Well, obviously, Where the Wild Things Are, probably.
Right. Wild Things was definitely quite early. The 13 Clocks was probably originally a read aloud. But I also remember reading it a few times in high school. At one point, I chose it as a book for a reading assignment, I think in the 6th grade. At that point, I was reading far above grade level, as I think a lot of us do who end up becoming novelists. And the books that I was interested in reading were considered to be not appropriate. But the 13 Clocks was fine. So I ended up doing that for my book report. And that edition of Robinson Crusoe was when I was quite young, because it was in my sister's room and I would have to go in and sort of sneak in there and borrow it.
Okay.
So probably when I was 8 or so.
Was that series? They were paperback, and I think every other page was a picture.
Yeah, they're illustrated classics for children or something.
Exactly.
Yeah, they're tiny.
I had those. Okay. Yep. Hey, they introduced us to a ton.
My brother.
Yeah.
Yes. Literature. It's good. It's a good thing.
What is the best thing you think you have ever spent money on to further your writing career?
The desk that I'm sitting at. It is a corner desk. It has a monitor stand at the top. I had to buy a custom keyboard tray underneath it so that I can set the height of the keyboard tray. But prior to that, I had all kinds of issues with my neck and shoulders that radiate down to my hands. Thoracic outlet syndrome, fancy term for it, but basically repetitive motion problems anytime I would type or use a mouse.
Okay.
And converting to the corner desk where everything can be in alignment between the monitor, the the desktop where I can have research materials or manuscript pages if I'm editing and such, and then the keyboard tray being at exactly the right level,
Right.
has been a godsend.
Huge difference, huh? Okay.
Yes,
This is
highly
always
recommend.
a very interesting answer. So, but you had a perfect reason for that. That is pretty cool. Do you think it makes your own writing more difficult or a little easier if you feel emotions strongly?
I think it's more difficult because you need to be able to get out of your own head and think, how do I want my reader to receive this? How do I evoke that emotion for the reader through the experience of the character, not through my own experience? And while certainly I often incorporate my own experience into the characters, I like to think that most of them are pretty distinct from me.
Okay.
So it's not about how I would respond. It's about how this character responds.
Right.
And if I can't take a step back from that emotionally, then I don't think I can present it clearly on the page. There are certainly times that I begin to have that kind of strong response. I need to have a powerful energy level, so I need to be excited about what's going on in the book. Sometimes that means I'm horrified about what's going on in the book, depending on what it is, but not necessarily experiencing the same emotion that the character is experiencing on the page.
Sure. Okay. That was a good distinction of if you let your emotion overwhelm you, that can color the character instead of trying to stay in character. Yeah, I teach character writing class and try to differentiate or try to impress on the attendees why we need to do that so that they're not just every character a mimic of us or just cardboard. You got to give them their own personalities. I like your answer. Thank you. Now we're getting a little bit more specific to your writing.
Okay.
Titles. Do you find them challenging? Do they come to you a little bit easy? And where in your writing process do they usually show up?
Usually easy and usually early.
Okay.
I don't always have them when I start. I will always have some kind of working title when I start, but often within a couple of chapters, I will. And of course, I have one book that I had to write because I had the title. And I have another one in the offing that I have to write because of the title. In both cases, because I think when the fans saw that or see that title, they will go, oh. So the one that I had to write that I have finished, my first series, the first book is called The Singer's Crown, and the singer in question, was inspired in part by Baroque opera, so the singer in question is a eunuch. And I intended it to be a standalone. It does have a standalone story. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. The character has adventures, there's magic, there's love, kings, princes, all of the traditional fantasy kind of stuff. And then I was like, okay, great, that story is done. And then I was going off about my merry way, and I thought, The Eunuch's Heir. Crap, I have a sequel. Because how could I just leave that title sitting there?
Right.
So I ended up with 3 books in that series and potential for others. But
do you find it so novel? So I get stories from a short story from a title, but I have not written. I haven't written. I haven't published any novels. They're junk. Not very many of them. But what I'm saying is, that's pretty impressive to have a whole novel based on a title. I do short stories all the time, but to carry you through a whole novel. That's I mean, that's a great title though. After you had a eunuch, because you got to flesh that out.
Right. It helps a lot when you already have a world, when you have the characters.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, although I also have the Greco-Roman historical novel that I was talking about is called The Water Thief. And that is a literal translation of the term clepsydra, which refers to a type of water clock used in the ancient
Okay.
world. Uh, and I was really intrigued by that, the water thief, as an idea of time and what does that mean.
Okay.
So I thought that's a great title for a book, and I kind of set it aside until I had done more reading and research and ended
Right.
up with the adventure novel that went along with that research, came back around to the title.
Your research is fascinating. I'm looking forward to your answer to the nonfiction titles, but we're not there yet. Don't speak.
Okay.
So what is your timeline like when you think of an idea and do your research and draft it, and then but finally say this is good. I'm gonna publish it, submit it, whatever level you are shooting for.
I'm often researching for several months
Okay.
before I actually start writing, and usually the research phase overlaps with whatever the current project is.
Okay.
Sometimes I'm researching deliberately, so I know that I'm going to write a book about something. Right now, I'm reading up on a couple of topics that I know are going to be combined into a book, and we can cover those things in the nonfiction book portion. But sometimes I'm just reading because that's what I do, and then I find something that I think could be a good hook for a book, and I end up looking more in that direction. Uh, I know that I'm ready to write a book or to begin when I have that moment I mentioned earlier,
Okay.
right, with Elisha Barber.
Yeah.
I have a person in a place with a problem.
Okay.
Often what happens next is I'll write a couple of chapters to kind of explore the characters, figure out what kind of place I'm in, what's going on, what level of conflict is going to be involved. Then I step back and work on developing the plot, coming up with outlines. I have a lot of note cards. I'm a note card and spreadsheet person.
Okay.
Not everybody is, but uh, so the note cards and spreadsheets, maybe just a couple of weeks. Sometimes the note cards are simultaneous with the research. When I start to get ideas, I'll just start making the note cards and I stick them aside
Right.
until I know I'm ready to play with that book. And then I pull them all out and sort of mess around with them and see what happens.
Okay.
The writing phase is usually a couple of months. I say usually Elisha Barber was 35 days. I deliberately wrote it as a chapter a day challenge. Most of my friends had been doing NaNoWriMo, but I had a wholesale gift business at the time. And let's just say in the wholesale gift business, you do not take November off. You are not, no, no. So I said, well, I'm going to be very busy in the month of November. And then in January, I'm just going to sit back and collect checks, which is very nice.
There you go.
That's the nice side of the business. But at that time, I could absolutely write a book.
Right.
So that was what I did. Other books have taken a lot longer, 200, 300 days. And those are writing days. So I have a spreadsheet where I keep track of elapsed time. So when I actually began and ended the book, and then how many days I was actually writing on them.
Okay.
For my thriller novels, it's usually, say, 60 to 80 days of writing time.
Nice. Okay. So do you have a designated time per day or word count per day that you strive for?
I'm usually aiming for word count.
Okay.
Most of the time, that's 2,000 words, and usually in the morning.
Okay. Now, backing up a little bit, where do you slip in creating that soundtrack for the character? In those first couple chapters you write about feeling it out?
Yes.
Or okay. All
Yep.
right. Interesting.
Sometimes it starts with sort of a theme song.
Yeah.
I will stumble across a song and I think, oh, that's a song that reminds me so much of this person. And so I kind of hang on to it and then create the soundtrack around it when I come to the project where that character is going to be key.
I find this fascinating. Kate Martin I got to interview last season, and she's the first person who mentioned that she doesn't do a soundtrack, but she has a specific song per character. So I actually did that when my writing class started up in January. We take November and December off because of the holidays, but we started in January, and I proposed that we do that, and everyone, didn't reveal what their song was, but helped create their character with that song, and it was very interesting. Um, it was fun, but we also gave ourselves a challenge, and we've never repeated from month to month. And so this is the first time in the 5 years I've been running this class where we repeated our character. And I had a very difficult time the second month picking up with an already created character with this song. So I found it an interesting challenge. I
You want
want
to know
to
how it got started?
explore more. How? Yeah.
Uh, so, um, after when my daughter was about 2 years old, my husband got laid off, and he is the primary breadwinner. So it seemed silly for him to just go out and get a job, any job. I said, well, you should probably send out the applications, wait for the right interviews, work on getting the right job. In the meantime, I will go to work
Okay.
40 hours a week. And he was stunned because like I have been self-employed since forever, doing one thing or another. So I managed to find a job that was absolutely perfect, sorting stamps for a stamp collector company, a philatelic company. And I wanted to make sure that I didn't lose track of my writing. So that's when I started using a soundtrack for the project I was then working on. When I was driving home from work, I would listen to the soundtrack in my car, and it would put me already in the frame
Sure.
for that book. When I got upstairs to my office and turned on the soundtrack,
Yep.
it's like I was already in the mood. I was already
That's cool.
prepared to sink into the world of the book and just hit the ground writing. There wasn't any of that, oh, where should I start?
Yeah.
I don't know. Which chapter was I working on? What character am I in? Like, what am I up to? None of that. So the soundtrack thing really worked for
That is
me, and it has
awesome.
proven to
Okay.
be very effective.
And obviously you've carried it on. That is cool. And then over time you've developed like adding the shanties, huh? I like that little bit of
It's
history.
better
Thank
with
you for
shanties.
sharing that. All right, so when you're done writing for the day,
Mm.
are you wiped out, tired, just need a hot bath and a good drink, or are you pumped up and ready to get out of the house?
I will say I'm probably tired.
Poured it all
Sit
into the writing.
down, chill out. Yep.
Yep.
Pet the dog, watch an episode of Taskmaster. Yeah.
That title sounds like it's work, though.
It's a hoot.
I've heard of it. I've never watched it, so I'll have to make a note. All right. Would you live in any of the worlds you've created, and which and why?
Only if I had really good medical coverage. uh, but if I could have a tour, I would love to
Oh,
visit the world of A Wreck of Dragons. Uh, this is my most recent publication as by Elaine Isaac.
okay.
It is a young adult science fiction novel. Think How to Train Your Dragon meets Pacific Rim.
Ah,
So there are dragons and also giant robots. And the way that you make that happen, of course, is outer space. So teenagers partner with giant robots in space to find a new home for mankind, but the Goldilocks planet they discover has already been claimed by the dragons. Um, I had so much fun creating that place, and yes, of course, it's dangerous. There's dragons, there's leviathans, there's a lot of bad stuff that can happen, and I I would love to go there.
you just need a big mechanized sidekick.
I that is what I need. That is what I need. That is what I
Awesome.
need. Yes.
That's
Everything's better with
great.
giant robots. I love big bots and I cannot lie.
Bum, bum, bum. So if I invited you to this writing class of mine, but I only let you say one sentence of advice, what would you say to my class?
One sentence of advice. Imaginary gardens with real toads in them. This is a quote from a poem. If you nail the details people will believe in your imaginary things.
Okay.
And if you fail on the details, they will not. The whole thing will become fuzzy. It will turn into mush because you haven't. But if you can say, here is a toad and it is bumpy and this is what it feels like and it lives underneath the watering can, and every morning the witch comes out of her little cottage and she picks up the watering can, disturbing the toad, and she waters the foxgloves and the foxgloves bite her hands. But because the toad is there and because it's so physical and you understand about toad,
Yep.
everything that follows after that becomes more believable.
Yep. You brought
That was more than a sentence because I had to explain the sentence.
You had to explain it, but as soon as you did, I totally followed you, and it brought back a memory. I'm going to steal a little bit of your minute to say this. So my dad and I went and watched Independence Day, that Will Smith movie. 20 years ago now? I don't know. My dad was a computer programmer. We walked out of the theater. He's dead silent. We get out to the parking lot, and he goes, he never would have uploaded that fast. At the end, when he flies in there and uploads it, I was like, what? And he's like, that's not how it works. I'm like, that's what you couldn't find believable?
Yes!
The little things.
So mine was going to see Jurassic Park. It must have been while I was in Italy as a student. Okay. One of my good friends was sitting next to me, and she was an illustration major who had had an internship the previous summer in scientific illustration with the world's leading expert on crane flies.
Wow.
What does this have to do with Jurassic Park, you'd like to know? So at the beginning of Jurassic Park, we're partway in, they show this piece of amber, and he's talking about the mosquitoes in amber and how they extract the DNA from the blood. And she immediately says, that's a crane fly! Well, of course it's a crane fly because crane flies are this big and mosquitoes are not.
Yeah. She knew her stuff.
That was
all right.
Everything. Okay.
What is the most difficult thing you have ever written?
The Book of Ash. The Book of Ash has not been published yet. It's been submitted a couple of times.
All right.
It is a mythic fantasy novel, so it feels very different from my usual work.
Okay.
That made it hard to write, both because it wasn't based on me doing a boatload of research and then writing a story about that. It was based on me driving through Yosemite at night after the wildfires a few years ago. And the wildfires were contained. They were out. There were areas you weren't allowed to go. But when you drove through at night, you could see the embers still burning. The first line that I wrote of that book was, he crafted her from fire and from vengeance.
Interesting. Okay.
And then I wrote the book from that, which exists somewhere in a space between, say, Peter S. Beagle's The Last Unicorn and N.K. Jemison's the Fallen Sky, Obsidian Sky.
Yeah, Obsidian Sky. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, as noted, very different kind of thing for me. My agent at that time wasn't quite sure what to make of it. It's been through a lot of changes since that agent. I'm still not quite sure what to make of it. I feel in my gut that it's a good book.
Okay.
But it was hard.
Only because I just read an article this morning. Have you heard of Frederick Durbin?
The name sounds familiar, but tell me more.
He had a new book come out, and the article that came to my attention was the basis of his novel is a short story he actually wrote for me 15 years ago. Anyway, I only bring it up to say his first novel is mystical, a green light, I think it's called. Thinking of that, your story made me think of that book, and made me say maybe we reach out to Fred and find out who that publisher was. It was a small press that published that book. But again, that was a dozen years ago when that book came out. I don't know. Sorry, just throwing out an idea of
yeah, no, I would
of
love
a
to see it out
book.
there. I think it would be impossible to self-publish because I wouldn't be able to name the comps, to name the titles that I would immediately say, aside from like The Last Unicorn. Okay.
That's pretty.
I don't know if people search for that or anyway.
So
still a book of my heart.
Well, that is interesting. Yes.
Someday.
And that's why it was so difficult too, probably because it was probably emotional for you, right? A little bit.
Indeed. Pardon me. Quiet dog has decided to be not quiet.
Oh, perfectly fine.
She's like, do I have to go? You do. You have to go. Okay. I'm back.
Here's one of my tongue-in-cheek questions for you.
Oh, goody.
This season, it's sporting choices. I'm going to give you 2 options, and you pick which one you would do. Swimming pool or shooting pool?
Oh, shooting pool.
Okay. Tennis court or basketball court?
God. You don't understand. My glasses, they're a ball magnet. Like any ball, anywhere, just wham.
You could get the racket in the way at least.
Maybe. I'm still going to go with the basketball court.
Okay.
Because I got teammates. They're going to be in the way. Okay.
There you go. And driving range or target range?
Target range.
Alrighty. See, that was a little bit of fun. Do you have a favorite quote, poem, lyric, and will you share it?
Sure. I actually have this quote stuck to the top of my monitor, and it has torn in half because I cut it out of a magazine. It has gone through several monitors with me, and it says there are 2 ways to get to the top of an oak tree. Catch that first limb and climb, or find a good acorn, sit on it, and wait. And it is my reminder that, yeah, there's a lot of good acorns out there, but you could be waiting for a very long time.
Yep.
So when I'm just sitting here thinking, well, this looks like a good acorn, maybe instead I should start climbing. So.
Do you have any idea who said that?
Well, I had to look it up for you because you asked me this earlier, and now I have forgotten because it's literally not on the quote that I have hung up, but is the founder of the Holiday Inn hotel chain, as I recall.
Okay. I'll have it. I'll be showing it on the screen. Not a problem.
That guy.
It's a great quote though, because you're right. You have to take your own initiative sometimes.
Sometimes you just got to get out there and do the thing.
All right, here is word association. Ready? I'm going to give you one word and you give us your thought. Okay. Sunset.
Sunrise.
Evocative.
Poetry.
Work.
Play.
Leather.
Corsets.
Flying.
Sounds like fun.
Heat.
Time for the air conditioning.
There you go. Tug.
Boats. I've been looking at boats a lot lately.
Story coming. Relaxation.
Nerf practice.
Yellow.
Yellowstone.
And race.
Race relations.
Hey, it's what comes to mind first. Nonfiction. Do you read it? And I think the answer is yes. So what are you reading and what are you recommending?
So one book I recently finished reading is called The Lion and the Fox. This is about the subtitle is Two Rival Spies and the Secret Plot to Build a Confederate Navy. It's one of the research books that I read for the book that I'm writing now. And it's actually a book that I bought for my husband, who has a few games that he plays based around different world navies, and he's been interested in the Civil War for one of those games. So I thought, oh, Confederate Navy, that sounds like something he would enjoy. I gave him the book for his birthday, and then a few weeks later, I was like, so Ed, can I borrow that book? Because I have an idea for a project, and I need to read that.
Yeah.
So I swiped it back from him. Another one is writing the breakout novel workbook. I have a writing study group that meets every Monday evening by Zoom. We've been meeting for 4 or 5 years now, actually.
Nice.
And the idea was that we could support each other as writers by doing the work. It's been said that you need to complete 10,000 hours in order to achieve mastery at something.
Right.
And you don't necessarily get there by just writing. It's by deliberate practice.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea was that we would pick up books about writing that we would read together, chapter by chapter. We would have a conversation about them, often a rant about them, because often we disagree, sometimes quite violently, with what the author's saying. And then do the exercises if we're able, if they fit into the project that we're working on at that time.
Okay.
So this is the one we're almost done with now. I admit to not having done the homework as much on this one just because it didn't mesh with where I was at with the project that I'm working on, but I hope to come back around to it later with another project.
Okay.
And then I'm reading a poetry book right now called No Ship Sets Out to Be a Shipwreck. And this book is absolutely brilliant and beautiful. And even if you think I'm not really a poetry person, it is inspired by the warship Vasa, which sank on its maiden voyage in the 1600s in Stockholm Harbor in Sweden. The ship was a masterwork of carving. It's just absolutely embellished from stem to stern, as they say. And unfortunately, they made the gun ports too low, so when they sailed out, it filled with water and sank to the bottom of the harbor.
Seriously? Wow.
Blah, blah, blah. Where it lay until the 1950s, when some folks who were interested in this story thought, wouldn't it be great if we could find it? They were able to not only find it, but eventually to actually bring it back to the surface. So now there is a museum in Stockholm where you can go visit. My husband has been there. I have not. I'm a huge shipwreck buff. And we met at a poetry reading. So poetry book about shipwreck, I am in.
Yeah.
And the author of this book writes a poem about virtually every aspect of it, from the widow of the shipwright who built it, to the perspectives on the ship itself, to different aspects of the carving, to the bones that are found in the wreck. One of my favorites is about the Uppsala boat grave, which is actually another museum featuring a Viking funeral. One of the graves that was found that is a boat with the body and the grave goods and everything in the boat. Only the body isn't actually there, so she speculates on where the body might have gone. And sometimes it's moving, and sometimes it's thought-provoking, and sometimes it's funny. It's beautiful.
That sounds actually rather fascinating. How thick of a book?
It's not very thick. It's pretty skinny.
That's still pretty good for a book of poetry on a sunken ship. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, sticking with things that move you, visual artists. Who creates the artwork that you enjoy the most?
Now it feels like we have this whole nautical theme going. One of my favorites is a local guy named Christopher Volpe. He has a series called Loomings, which are inspired by Moby Dick. And seeing his artwork actually made me go back and listen to the audiobook of Moby Dick. Huh. The nice thing about audio is you can speed it up.
Yep.
But his work is just magnificent. They're huge canvases, most of them. He also has some quite small pieces. I was on a day that I was feeling especially wealthy, able to buy one of the little ones. So it's hanging in my dining room. Nice. and the paintings have tar in them. Some of
Okay.
them have actual gold leaf as well. So they carry all of that darkness all
Yeah.
the way up to the brilliant gleam of the gold.
Huh.
And he has another series that are scenes from a lost film, one of which reminded me of another favorite quote, which I think is E. E. Doc Smith, that writing a novel is like driving in the dark. You can only go as far as your headlights take you, but you can make the whole drive that way.
Yeah. Very good.
So Christopher Volpe had a painting that very much evoked that
Okay.
sentiment for me. And again, it was in an exhibition where it didn't sell. So I reached out to him and I was like, by any chance,
Right.
do you still have that? And I was able to put it on my wall.
Very nice. Very nice. It's very cool when you can get art that moves you on your own walls.
And then I did a deep dive into Caravaggio, who has fascinated me since I was in art school, for one of the Bongard thrillers, where all of the clues are around Caravaggio's life and in some of his works, because some of his paintings really do have hidden figures in them and all kinds of other stuff going on. So,
Okay.
big fan.
I failed to tell you at the 30-minute mark
Uh-oh.
because I've been fascinated. We just hit 42 and we have 5 more questions to go.
Sorry.
4 more questions. Oh, no, you're fine. I stole a couple minutes talking about me.
Okay.
All right. Who do you think writes the characters you most enjoy reading? This is one of my favorite questions.
Right now, John Wiswell, whose first novel just came out. He has some remarkable short stories.
Can you spell Wiswell?
Wiswell.
Okay.
His first novel is Someone You Can Build a Nest In.
Okay.
And it is from the point of view of a monster who is frustrated because adventurers keep coming to try to kill her. She has to deal with them. She is able to kind of take human form. It requires some shenanigans. And eventually she ends up having to leave her cozy, comfy lair and figure out what on earth is going on out there.
Huh.
But just all of his characters are marvelous and fascinating and fraught. And he has a couple more books coming out. The next one is called Wearing the Lion, and it is about Heracles, only Heracles, instead of killing all of the monsters he's supposed to kill, ends up befriending them.
Okay. I am
So,
definitely looking this person up. I work part-time
I
at a
am
bookstore
in.
too, and I like adding
Oh,
books.
nice.
So I don't recognize this name, but I hope we have him already. So, all right. Anyone else? Or is that your favorite right now?
He's my favorite right now.
Okay.
The Elizabeth George is one of my favorite mystery authors, and she's great because she expands her character relationships over the course of the mystery series. A lot of times mystery protagonists, it's like, oh, you have the protagonist, you have the sidekick, you have the love interest, and it's kind of the same characters through the books. They don't really change and grow that much, and who they are and how they relate to each other doesn't have that great of an impact on the story. And Elizabeth George goes against all of that. So her characters are also marvelous.
Okay. See, I get better at my job with these interviews because I have people come in asking for good mysteries all the time. So now I can say I know Elizabeth George.
Check her out. She also has a great book about writing called Mastering the Process.
Oh, that's good to know. How do you give depth to your characters? You've alluded to this a little bit, but how do you do it? And do you treat first, second, third level characters differently?
I use very much of an inside out process. I actually just taught a workshop on this called Bodies and Heartbeats, crafting characters from the inside out. Nice. So I look at goal, motivation, and conflict, which again, there's a how-to book that's specific to that. I want to know what this character is up against, what their background is, and thus kind of what's motivating them to keep beating their head against the terrible things that they usually come in conflict with externally because of whatever their internal conflicts are. Sure. So that's also one of the ways that I make sure that they're different from me, is they have all of those other things going on that they're trying to deal with at the same time.
Right.
So I guess secondary characters usually have some of that. I like to give the sense that the other characters have those full, rich lives.
Mm-hmm.
You're just not privy to it. I do subscribe to the theory that everybody is the hero of their own story, so that when you meet somebody else in the novel, even if they're only going to be there for a scene, that they should have a sense of purpose in that scene. They're
Okay.
not just sort of standing there waiting for the protagonist to show up so they can do whatever is required of them by the plot.
Right.
The protagonist is an interruption in their life or in their day to do whatever the protagonist is trying to do.
Good point.
And maybe conflict with that person, or maybe that person is helping them out, or whatever the relationship is. But it is a relationship, and that means it goes two ways.
Yeah. Good point. Yeah. Okay. So, which of your own characters would you like to hang out with? Maybe grab a drink with?
I'm going to say Nigel Rowe from the Rogue Adventure series,
Okay.
because he would be really fun. He's a disgraced British anthropologist, and I just love a British accent, so that would be lovely. He's also a fan of cider, as I am, so we could go drink cider together. That would be lovely. He's been all kinds of places, many places I have not yet been, and he has stories about all of those places.
Yep, I could see that.
He's also a fantastic cook.
Dang.
So probably we would meet at his place and he would cook something. And he's an extrovert, so he would do all the talking.
I like this, but since you gave me your husband's name, I was gonna say, does Ed know? All right, the most challenging question on the whole list I've heard.
Oh no.
If you could have free reign to write anyone's character from any medium, who would you write?
So years ago, I went to San Diego Comic-Con for the first time.
Okay.
And while I was there, I attended a panel called the Dark Crystal Author Quest, because the Henson Estate and a couple of other entities had banded together and put out the call for someone to write a Dark Crystal novel. And I immediately thought, I am there.
Awesome.
And they had put out a sample contract. It was work for hire. It was one of the most odious work for hire things you ever saw. But of course, you're talking about playing in Jim Henson and Brian Froud's world.
Right.
Right. You had to know that these weren't going to be your characters. You couldn't just go off with them and do whatever you want. So I shared the quest with some friends of mine, and they were like, oh, it's like, I can play in Jim Henson's yard,
Right.
and they're not going to kick me out. Like, Brian Froud made all these amazing things, and I get to go in there with them. So yeah, I have written a Dark Crystal novel, which of course also remains unpublished. It may be sneakily available on one of my websites if you happen to be a big Dark Crystal fan. I don't know if there are enough big Dark Crystal fans out there. There should be more, obviously. But I really felt that that particular work also jibes well. It resonates with my sensibilities as an author in terms of the balance of light and dark.
Okay.
And the potential for transformation.
Wow, that's cool because you definitely did that in here. Was it Joanna's Axe? Was
Yeah.
the name of your story? Yeah, you definitely did that in there. I like that. All right, wrapping up with the last question.
Okay.
Are you trying to share anything with your readers?
Am I trying to share anything with my readers? Yes. If people are going to take something away from my books, I would like it to be that you can be the hero. Okay. That most of my heroes are not the chosen one. They might have some skills. They might have some training. But there's always somebody beside them who stepped up, not because they had training, not because they had any skills, not because they woke up that morning and thought, gosh darn it, I need to get out there and save the world, right, but because they were in a position to do so. They saw something that needed doing, and instead of walking away, they decided to do that, even if it was a small thing at first. they committed to taking action.
Yep.
And that could be you.
Yep. Very cool. Ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Yep.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. We stop our clock now. We hit 52 minutes.
All right. That's close, right? Is that close?
That, yes. You know what? Season 2 has been adding at least 6 to 8 minutes on these. I don't know what I did. I think I talk too much now. Maybe I got to shut up.
It was a great conversation, though. I really enjoyed that.
Now, this is where there's no time limit. Oops. We get to listen to you. I want you to tell us something cold from your writing that you'd like a little bit more attention on, something current, and something coming if you can hint at it.
Okay. Well, I was going to talk about Elisha Barber, but as something cold, but we already taled about that some.
You get a double then.
Yeah, all 5 books are out. That series is the series that changed me from being a pantser to being a plotter. And because when I had an editor interested in book 1, I had already finished 5 books for reasons I can't get into right now, because even though we're over time, we don't want to be that much over time. And they said, well, we really love book 1. We feel like the other part, I had sent them an outline of the rest, that doesn't really live up to the promise of book 1. But if you can restructure this, we'll offer you a 5-book contract. So I was incentivized to figure out how to plot from scratch. And the first couple were easy because I could just take the material that I already had and sort of squish it into a couple of books. So I had some ideas. The editor had some ideas. I tried his ideas. They didn't really work. We both agreed on that. And then I had the very Grinchy idea. The Grinch in The Grinch Who Stole Christmas has a wonderful, awful idea. And for me, that wonderful, awful idea was the culminating scene in the 5-book series.
Cool.
And so I knew what I had to do, and I was able to write them. And now, because the series is complete and you don't have to buy one book and then wait for the next one to come out, you could just jump on in there and consume them all and hopefully love them.
Awesome. What's the name of the series?
So The Dark Apostle is the series as a whole. The first book is Elisha Barber. Each of the books has Elisha's name and then his sort of profession. Okay. So yeah, the second one is Elisha Magus because he has discovered he has magical ability. The third one is Elisha Rex. Do not recommend calling the third book in your series Elisha Rex unless it's the last book in the series, which it wasn't. Book 4 is Elisha Mancer, which is short for necromancer, and book 5 is Elisha Demon.
And you've been plotting ever since?
And I have been plotting ever since. Perhaps in more ways than one.
Yes, exactly. All right. Something current.
Something current. So here we go, Little Vanna. I don't write a lot of short fiction, but this one came out just recently. This is Last Ditch. It is an anthology from Zombies Need Brains.
Okay.
Last Ditch is spy stories, but because it's Zombies Need Brains, they have to be science fiction or fantasy spy stories. And mine is a historical fantasy set in World War II in Lithuania.
Imagine.
So that was a fun little research project. It's actually related to a novel that I'd like to write someday. So I had this character in mind, and when the opportunity, I was asked to be an anchor author for this anthology came up.
Cool.
And I thought, oh, here's an opportunity maybe for me to write a little bit about this character, get to know him, and then come up with sort of a short version of what that novel might be like.
That's great. That worked twice as well for you then too, because you got to flesh out that character for yourself a little bit. Awesome.
Yep. So very happy with that. And then what is coming or possibly, depending on the timing of when you all get to watch or listen to this interview, is Lost Cause, which is book 2 in the Ricky Talons series that I'm writing together with my friend Douglas Pratt. This is the female-led tropical adventure series that I mentioned earlier.
Yep.
And Lost Cause finds our independent treasure hunter, Ricky, going after a missing Confederate blockade runner that was built in England. And she has some adversaries on both sides of the pond.
Ah,
So
okay. Is it different? Are you able to go back and forth between writing YA and not YA, or do you have to have a mindset change?
it is a bit of a mindset change. Fortunately, I don't do much in YA, so
Okay.
but every once in a while, like when I was doing the Elisha books, that was a big leap from almost anything else I wrote. They border on horror. I don't think it quite crosses. Well,
Okay.
probably the last couple of books do cross the line. uh, and I know
Master
that
Inhuman.
one of
Yeah.
my friends at least, nominated me for a Bram Stoker award. Um,
Nice.
I consider them to be dark fantasy. Your mileage may vary, but certainly there were some other projects that came along at the time that I needed kind of a palate cleanser before I
Okay.
could move from this to that.
What what's the leading song on Elisha's soundtrack?
There is a group called Medieval Babes,
Oh, okay.
which is an all-female ensemble performing medieval music.
You know what? I'm adding that back up to your music line so I can show a cover album or something. Medieval Babes.
Medieval Babes.
All right. And that, dear friends, wraps up our time with Elaine. Thank you very much for sharing your life, universe, and everything with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I had a great time.
My thanks to Elaine for sharing so much of her life, universe, and everything with us on this episode of 24 in 42. I enjoyed our conversation quite a bit as we delved into her favorites and what her processes are like. Our discussions on writing, on nonfiction, on artists, and on what Elaine has written and we've yet to see were fascinating. I won't even hold against her that slipping in of a second favorite quote. Find some Elaine Isaac and E.C. Ambrose books and get reading. Until next time, this was 24 in 42.